You are an adult. You have a job, a life, responsibilities, perhaps even people who depend on you. And yet, the moment you walk through that door, sit at that table, hear that particular tone in someone's voice, something collapses inside you. You are no longer 32 or 45, or whoever you have spent years becoming. You are 9 again, small again, waiting for approval that never quite arrives. This is not weakness. This is something far older than you know. Before you understood what a role was, you were already living inside one. There is a particular kind of family dynamic that operates less like a home and more like a quiet theater. Everyone has a part. The peacekeeper, the responsible one, the difficult one, the invisible one. You did not audition for your role. It was assigned before you could speak in full sentences, before you could question whether it fit you, before you even knew there was a stage. Children are extraordinarily adaptive. This is not a flaw. It is survival. When love feels conditional, when attention is rationed, when approval must be earned through behavior rather than simply being, a child learns very quickly which version of themselves is welcome at the table. And so you shaped yourself, quietly, efficiently, the way water shapes itself to whatever container holds it. You learned what made the room relax. You learned what made the air go heavy. You learned to read moods the way some people read weather, not because you were gifted, but because you had to be. And here is what no one tells you about the early years. The adaptations that protect you as a child become the walls that confine you as an adult. The child who learned to shrink to avoid conflict becomes the adult who cannot hold their ground. The child who smiled through pain becomes the adult who cannot name what they feel. The mold was made then. You just didn't know you were still living inside it. At some point, perhaps in your teens, perhaps early adulthood, you began to sense it, a kind of doubling. There was the person you were out there, capable, perhaps confident, someone building something, someone with opinions, with edges, with a voice that took up space. And then there was the person you became the moment family entered the picture. Softer, more careful, watching, waiting. You may have noticed this contrast felt almost embarrassing. How could you negotiate in a boardroom and then freeze when a parent raised an eyebrow? How could you set boundaries with strangers and dissolve completely when a sibling used that particular tone? It felt like inconsistency, like failure, like you were somehow not healed enough, not strong enough, not done enough. But this was not failure. This was the nervous system doing exactly what it was trained to do. Your family system, every family system, has its own emotional gravity. And gravity is not something you overcome through willpower. You don't decide to stop feeling the pull of the earth simply because you've grown taller. The older you get, the more capable you become. And yet the gravitational pull of the original family field remains. It knows exactly where your fault lines are because it helped create them. So you learn to be two people, the one who lived your life and the one who went home for the holidays. And you told yourself this was fine. You told yourself everyone does this. You told yourself it would get easier. Some part of you always knew it hadn't.
There comes a point in many lives, often quietly, without announcement, when the distance between who you are and who you become around your family becomes unbearable to ignore. It might arrive as exhaustion, a particular dinner where you drive home in silence, feeling emptied in a way you cannot explain to a partner, a friend, anyone who wasn't in the room. It might arrive as grief, a slow, confusing sadness for something you cannot name, for a version of yourself that keeps disappearing every time you cross a certain threshold. It might arrive as anger, not the clean kind, the complicated kind, the kind that frightens you because you love these people. You do. And yet. You may have felt it in moments when you tried to speak and heard yourself apologize instead.
when you tried to assert something and watched yourself retreat before the sentence was finished. When you wanted to say, "I am not the person you think I am anymore," and found no words arrived. The breaking years are not necessarily dramatic. For many people, nothing shatters visibly. What breaks is internal, a quiet fracturing between the self that has grown and the role that has not been updated, between who you know yourself to be in privacy and who you are allowed to be in presence. This is the cost of unexamined family dynamics. Not screaming matches, not obvious wounds, but the slow, persistent ache of being chronically smaller than you actually are. At some point, not all at once and never perfectly, something shifts. You begin to see the pattern not as a personal failing, but as a system. A very old, very practiced, very unconscious system. You begin to understand that the child inside you was not wrong to adapt. That child was brilliant. That child survived something. But the survival strategy has outlasted the danger, and now it is costing you something real. This is not a moment of anger toward your family, necessarily. It doesn't have to be. Some people in that family were doing their own shrinking, playing their own inherited roles, carrying wounds they never examined either. The theater is old. The script was written long before you arrived. The decision point is not about assigning blame. It is about recognition. The moment you see that the child who needed to make themselves small to be loved is not the same as the adult who deserves to be seen fully. These are different people, separated by time, and it is possible, slowly, imperfectly, to begin to honor that difference. You are allowed to grow beyond the role you were given. You are allowed to carry love for your family and still refuse to disappear inside it. You are allowed to be, in every room you enter, the full size of who you actually are. There is a particular kind of grief in this realization, because it means something was missed, something that a child deserved that was not quite given. And grief is not something you resolve. It is something you learn to carry differently. But there is also something else. There is relief. The quiet, tentative relief of finally seeing the thing clearly, of understanding that the collapsing you feel around family is not proof that you haven't grown. It is proof of how long you have been navigating something real, something invisible, something that has been there since before you had words for it. You are not